Win a Pageant, Episode 14.
Every individual pageant contestant has a unique set of strengths that set her apart from the competition. All you need is a clear path to help you discover your strengths to win on stage and in life. Let's win a pageant.
Hi, winners. Welcome to another episode of Win a Pageant. I'm your coach, Alicia Darby. Pageant interviews are not designed to be easy. In fact, I believe that they are even more difficult than job interviews. And that's because federal laws actually prohibit employers from asking questions like, do you have children? And are you a U.S. citizen? And questions that could lead to discrimination. And those are called illegal questions. But pageants are like wide open space of all sorts of wild questions. Now, some pageants do have rules. For example, the Miss America system doesn't allow for talents to be performed. And at the Miss International pageant, they don't allow for political questions unless they're brought up by the contestant. If you need to know the rules of your pageant, which I always recommend, then just ask your pageant director much before the interview. Just ask them what questions are off limits. But most pageants do really allow for just about anything. And so, as you can imagine, all kinds of crazy questions do get asked. And as the future title holder, you really do need to be prepared to deal with just about anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll always have like a slick answer to every question that's asked, but just as in real life, people ask all sorts of dumb and offensive, provocative, inappropriate, rude questions. So you'll experience that as a title holder, especially when you're least expecting it. So you've got to be prepared to respond. So let me give you a few examples of some of the tough interview questions that you might experience in your interview. And I've grouped these into three categories. The first is what I call confusing politics. So I received a question like this where is somebody wants to really what they want to know is like if you know what this topic is about, but they ask it in a way that's really just asking your opinion. So the question that I got was, and I don't remember it exactly, but it was something along the lines of, do you think that Congressman so-and-so was wise to make his announcement prior to the election, or do you think he should have waited? And so I'll explain how I answered this question, but it's something like that where you're kind of like, what? What are you talking about? So it's this confusing political question. The second category you might get is just simply personally offensive. A great example of this is a judge that may ask you, have you ever felt insecure about your body weight? Other questions might be dealing with something loosely related to a platform, especially if it's uber personal, and it can just be offensive. The third example of a really tough interview question is somebody that's leading you down a path that you don't really belong on, okay? And for me, that question was, at the time, what kind of mom do you want to be? And the reason that it was a leading question is because it assumes that you want to be a mom. And if your answer is that you do not want to be a mom, well, then that question is going to really throw you off, And you can probably think of other questions that you've been asked or you've heard other people be asked in their interview. And really, sometimes they do just slip out awkwardly. Like oftentimes judges aren't intending them to be so awkward or uncomfortable or offensive. But sometimes they are by design in order to just throw you off. So here's what you need to know. And this is my rule for interview just in general. I believe that you don't have to have an actual answer for every question. However, you do need to respond. Now, what I mean by that is that you don't have to answer the question directly. So if they ask you a question and it's like one of these three questions, you don't have to answer exactly what they're asking. But you should provide some type of reply to at least acknowledge that you're still in control of the room. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to really dive into the 4 ways that you can answer these questions. So the first way and the most simplest form that you can respond to this is to actually answer the question. Now, of course, this is much easier if the leading question is leading you down the path you're already on, or if you're not confused, or if you're not offended. And in all of those cases, then just answer the question. Even if you are offended in many cases, you could just answer the question. So if you don't really care, just go for it. Just answer it. Okay, so that's the easy way. Now, the second thing is to answer what they're really asking instead. So for example, the question that I gave you about what type of mom do you want to be, you might just gather that really what they're trying to understand is your family values. What do you value in family? So you might say something along the lines of, well, I haven't decided if I'm going to be a mom or not, but if I were to, here would be the values I would hope to live by. And then you can continue to share those. Another question that's frequent in this category is, do you have a lot of free time? And of course, who has really a lot of free time, right? But really, the question that they're trying to understand is if you have time to be a title holder. Do you have time to add this extra thing? A lot of pageant women, you're all really, really super busy. And I understand that, and so when they're really asking this question, do you have lots of free time? They don't care if you have free time or not. What they want to know is, do you have time to take on this role? So you might just simply answer, if you're wondering if I have time to be a title holder, the answer is yes. I've structured my future to allow for flexibility so I can easily accommodate the tasks that I would need to as a title holder if I am selected. So you're still answering what they're really getting at without having to answer the actual question. Number 3, the third way that you can respond is to say, and this is only if the case is true, you could say, I don't know the situation that you're referencing, but if you give me a few more details, I would be happy to share my opinion. Now, when I'm working one-on-one with my clients, I always recommend that they practice saying this out loud. And I'm going to ask that of you right now as well, because it is highly likely that you will get a question, whether it's today or next week or during your interview or at your next appearance, you're going to get a question that you just don't know the answer to. And that's okay. Goodness, they're not possibly expecting you to have answers to every single question. So if they're referencing something that you don't know the answer to, just say that. In the example that I gave you about the political question that I was asked, my response was, I'm sorry that I don't know the specific situation that you're referencing. Now, I actually chose to just drop it at that because I actually had no clue, up from down, left from right. I didn't know what they were talking about, the person, the situation, nothing. I knew nothing. So I didn't know how deep that rabbit hole really went. So I felt like if I asked for details, that could either take up my whole interview and I wouldn't be able to really communicate myself, or they would give me a couple details and it certainly wouldn't be enough for me to really share my opinion. So in that case, I just said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the situation you're referencing. And then we moved on, something else. And I ended up winning the pageant. So it works. Okay, the fourth and final way that I want to share with you to respond to an uncomfortable interview question is to simply say, I don't feel comfortable answering that question in this setting. And that is completely fine. You will have opportunities in your life where people push you up against the wall and make you uncomfortable in this setting. And it is okay to say, I do not feel comfortable doing that right now. Like, this is not the time and place for that. So the same is true. Goodness, you probably know, ladies, when you are, let's say that you're at a friend's party or get together with other friends and somebody corners you and starts to gossip about someone else who's right in the room. You could easily say to them, look, I don't feel comfortable talking about this right now in this setting. And that is a perfectly acceptable answer. And in fact, it will be honored because people are going to understand where you're coming from. And goodness, it tells way more about your character than it would to answer the question. As a career counselor, I trained my college students to do this in the exact same way. I would intentionally, during their mock interviews, I would intentionally ask them questions that stepped into those illegal boundaries to see how they would be able to respond. And I trained them to answer the questions in the very same way. So when they're asked something like, are you pregnant, in a job interview or something, I was able to teach them how to say, I think what you might be getting at is whether or not I'll be fully prepared to dive into this job. And the answer is yes, I'm very prepared to take on this role. So that's one example of kind of sidestepping it. You don't have to answer the question, you just have to respond. Okay? And the choice is yours. Remember that you are in control of the interview room. So keep it together. Keep it pointed in the direction of your crown. You are the one in control. And that, ladies, is how you win a pageant. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.
To learn more and to get valuable resources to help you win, visit winapageant.com.
Hey there, I'm Alicia Darby, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching that last video. If you totally loved it and got something from it, would you just click subscribe right here to subscribe to our YouTube channel? Hey, I am here for you, and I've got so many more trainings and videos for you. In fact, this one would be a really great one to watch next, Or if that topic doesn't interest you, then try this one. It's my most recent video training. So I think both of these would be really great for you. Thank you again so much for subscribing. I am honored to be your coach. I'll see you again soon.